Welcome everyone to Scale Lab, brought to you by TechLeap. I am your co-host, Joe Wilson, and I'm here with my co-host. And if I were an E-Step, also known by a different name in the US, he would definitely be an E-Scooter. Constantijn, we have an E-Step, E-Scooter guest with us today.
Yes, we do. A remarkable one. Maxim, who's actually from France and built up his business here in Amsterdam. So a lot we want to talk about. Maybe actually that's a good question to start off with. What the hell are you doing here?
In Amsterdam.
Why here, man? Wasn't there somewhere else?
Well, it's a great city. There are, nice canals.
But there are no
lanes.
E-scooters in the
No
Netherlands.
e-scooter, indeed. Yeah. So the story is that 4 years ago, when we decided to create the company, we are with a bunch of guys all passionate about micromobility. But we happened to be a little bit everywhere in Europe. So I was in Berlin, Henry with my co-founder was in London, and we had a bunch of guys in Paris, in Warsaw, and other cities. And the only thing we knew was that we wanted to build a business in shared micromobility that would be focused on the European market. And so to some extent, it didn't matter to us exactly which city we would be based on. And at that time, the guy who happened to become our head of people, so recruitment, was located in Amsterdam. And by chance, he found some great people in software product, engineers and product people. And so we decided in the end to build the company around these initial product people that we found. Obviously, Amsterdam is also a great city to do business. Administration is pretty straightforward. It's also a great place to recruit. Many people are attracted by the city, so that was good for us. The only thing we did not know at that time was that we would not be able to operate our e-scooters. We thought naively it would be easy to operate them in Amsterdam, but due to change of regulation, basically, it was not possible. I would say the good thing, though, is that it forced us, the positive side is that it forced us to become international right away. So we had no choice but to launch outside the Netherlands.
But you could have left. This is really quite a bizarre story that you're actually the one of the only countries in Europe where you cannot actually deploy e-mobility, at least not the scooters. Is your HQ, and it still is.
It still is, yeah. It's Amsterdam is the place where today we build most of our software and most of our hardware, and where we have also a lot of our central functions. But now I think we live a bit in a different world where we have also a lot of remote staff. So we have also I would say headquarters for operations that tend to be more in Paris. We have also a lot of product people that are now located in Paris, in London, in other locations. So not everything is also in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get right in, because I want to get straight onto the product stuff. I know you had a couple of questions, but I'll lead in with this one, which is there have been other companies who have attempted to do this. Some have come, some have gone. You were briefly associated with one massive one, Ofo. But why does Dott get to keep growing when, I think Lime and Bird and some of the others are kind of on the downside, but maybe you can just, because that's a product market fit question. What's making Dott's ability to continue?
Yeah, I think at the beginning of shared micromobility, there was really this thinking in this industry that you had to grow as fast as possible to get into the cities and to basically build your user base. And what we saw is that the prime with this kind of thinking was that it's extremely capex intensive. You have to basically buy the vehicles and then you may or may not get the return. And what was happening is because a lot of these businesses did not have their business right or their product fit right, they were basically burning a lot of cash. And for these companies, it was pretty much either they would keep basically raising more and more money to a point where hopefully they would be self-sustainable, or they would die basically. And what I think has happened since the beginning of this industry is that a lot of the early companies such as Ofo, the Chinese bike-sharing company, that tried to go as fast as possible, basically had such big losses on their businesses that basically, today they don't exist anymore. And so we took a very different strategy, which was much more product focused, where we said, let's go slower. Let's be a bit more disciplined in our approach. Let's get first the product fit right. So meaning that we said, okay, let's go into one city, 2 cities, 3 cities. Let's take a bit of a test store approach where we'll test the product, make sure that the users like it, that operationally it works, that we get the unit economics right. And only after, once we believe this is scalable and is profitable, we are going to replicate it in more cities. And that's where we are today, is that after having had this initial phase of fairly slow, now we have started actually to expand a lot more quickly. So today we are in about 40 cities across Europe.
And now is it now going to become more of economies of scope versus scale, or are you still very much in the scale business?
I think we are definitely in the scale business, but I think the to come back to Joe's initial point, for us the first thing was to get the product fit right. What's the product fit for our market? What we are offering is basically an equivalent of a public transport service, but for short distance trips. And so what do people want? They want first the vehicles that we offer to be always available where they need it. Then they need to be able to rely on it. So it means that it needs to always work. And then the third thing is that it needs to be affordable. And that, availability, reliability, and affordability are really these 3 key pillars that in terms of product we are all the time working on. And the way we do it and the way we, I would say, differentiate ourselves is that since the beginning we decided to do all operations in-house when all the other players were outsourcing basically their operations, so through the gig economy or third parties. We decided to do it all in-house, a little bit more like, I would say, an Amazon, so that we could really control 100% the user experience, the safety of the vehicles that we are offering, and also fully control the way our operations were run in the streets of the city, so that we make sure that they are as orderly as possible.
Yeah, we will go back into that, the relationship with government and local. But so are you, but so once you had that nailed down for the scooters, then moving into other vehicles, or prefer to go into new markets with the same product? What's the current strategy or the future?
Yeah, so our vision is really to offer mobility service for all trips that are not covered, that are non-walkable and not covered by, I would say, public transit. So basically, any short distance trips in cities, we want to offer a mobility solution. So as such, our goal is really to offer a service for everyone. And so that means that e-scooters by themselves, or e-steps as you call them here, will not cover all the needs of people for short distance trips. So this is why we have added electrical bikes, which we think are more suitable for older people. We know also that women prefer electrical bikes compared to e-scooters, but that's also not enough. So ultimately, we are going probably through partnerships or by ourselves to offer cargo bikes, maybe 3-wheelers, 4-wheelers, basically trying to cover all the possible needs that people have. So for instance, families, today, an e-bike or an e-scooter is not that convenient, so cargo bikes or maybe a 3-wheeler would be a lot more convenient for them.
But it stops at the car. There's a little city car, is that still one of the options?
I think we are open, let's say, for whatever you call them, but for smaller electrical 4-wheelers. So far, we think that their environmental impact is sufficiently low to justify it.
Because that's an important driver for you, right? The impact, environmental impact.
Yeah, exactly. So one of our, I would say, motivation, was really to transform the way people move in cities, but also improve the life of people in cities. And by that, we mean that we believe that increasing the use of micro-mobility vehicles in cities can, one, reduce air pollution, two, reduce noise pollution, and three, make basically the life of people a lot more enjoyable because you don't get stuck into traffic jams. You're not crammed into a bus on a train. Instead, you can move freely in the city.
Just one more question on product market fit. In most companies that we talk to, when you do product market fit, you're dealing with like a product and the person's interaction with the product. As you described it, I heard far more things in product market fit. I mean, you could say an e-scooter, well, it's a step and it's how many different features or functionalities. That one's not maybe as complicated as the app and the location and where they are and if they're available. Something. Is there anything else you'd like to share? I mean, as other entrepreneurs listening, like when you think about product market fit, I mean, how many layers do you have to go in that thinking?
So, in terms of pure product market fit, there are probably 3 or 4 core know-how that we need to master for Dott. So the first one is hardware. If you want the experience to be safe and reliable for people, you need to have really good, robust, and safe hardware for people. Second is obviously software. So we leverage a lot data algorithm to basically rebalance the fleet and make sure it's always available where people need them, and we're constantly refining these models. But obviously you need also to offer a good app which perfectly works in terms of payments, etc. And 3, you need obviously to master also operations. So you need to make sure that the batteries are always charged. You need to make sure that the maintenance is always done, and basically ensure that these vehicles are made all the time available for people.
I had this vision of self-driving steps that will move themselves to where they need to be in the city at the right time. So there'll just be like fleets of these things running without people, and they land somewhere in the city, and you're like, now we have them exactly where we need them.
There are companies working on that.
That's a possibility.
There's a startup in the US that
but no, that sounds like you have to have the whole operation up and running, basically the logistics and the software platform and all that. Is that how it went, or did you start with not having everything right in place, and you found that the software wasn't working, or you didn't have the logistics, and all the bikes, all the steps end up in one place, and you need to have them in the other? And so, as you launched in your first city, what are the major lessons that you learned there?
Yeah, so from the beginning, we really made a conscious decision to do in-house operations. Which means that obviously at the beginning you start from scratch, so you have a lot of learnings. We decided also to do all the software in-house from the beginning, simply because we could not find basically any third party that would provide a good solution, and we thought anyway it would be core to our business. The part that we did not do ourselves from the beginning was hardware. So we did not do hardware because the development time is so long. You are talking about 2 years typically. That if we wanted to be in the business, basically, we had to buy it off the shelf.
Was there a differentiator? I mean, could you slightly differentiate the hardware to serve you, or to differentiate yourself from your competitors, or was it basically the same?
So one of the great things which explain, I think, partially our initial success but also failures, was that we spend a lot of time to try to find the best off-the-shelf e-scooter we could find. So at that time, a lot of the players were using e-scooters which were made for the individual consumer market, so meaning that they were not very strong. They used to break very quickly. There was a lot of waste. And we found a model which was really designed for the shared mobility industry. So it was much more robust. It had bigger wheels. It has a larger deck. And it had also mechanical brakes, which at that time were the first one to launch. And so when we launched, people really saw that we were offering a product that was much more safe, I would say, than anything else that was on the market. And that enables us at the beginning to gain a lot of customers. The problem was that even though we spent a lot of time to choose the right one, we found a lot of issues with this first e-scooter. So we had to basically, at some point, take all the fleet out of the street, and you are talking about 8,000-10,000 e-scooters. Disassemble them, fix them, reassemble them and put them back on the market, including the PCBA, which we were using for the IoT, which we had to redesign, remanufacture, and put them. So it was a huge work, and I think cost us a lot of money, almost killed the company, but we got a lot of learnings out of it, which is one, how important hardware is. We already knew it, but we knew it even more, and that's when we started to build a very strong hardware team. And IoT technology, we found also it's very important to master it, and so we built the IoT team on the back of this issue.
I'm going to keep moving through some topics. Capital, I think you guys just not so long ago announced another part of a Series B.
Yeah.
So it was like a two-part. I'm curious, what was it that investors are most connecting with on your story now? Is it unit economics? Is it marketing? I'm just, because it's a lot of people listening are either maybe gearing up to raise a Series B, not a Series A. And I'm curious what was resonating on your story for investors this round.
Yeah, so I think it's probably one our ability to generate strong unit economics, so positive or profitable unit economics, leveraging specific strengths that we have as business. So one is that I think our in-house operations, which are, I would say, technology or software driven. So we proud ourselves of using what we call the Dott operating system, which has been built in-house to constantly basically improve or make our operations more efficient. Think about Amazon basically, like building their operations and constantly improving them. And two is, I think, really our focus on the product. So really constantly trying to or improving the user experience and through this small percentage gain in terms of availability, in terms of reliability compared to the competition, really gaining market share. And we have shown as a business again and again that even if we come to a city, the last one, which happened, in Brussels, in Paris, in Lyon, where we came number 10, number 12, nobody gave us a chance. We came out, every time, usually number one, or if not number one, number two. And why? It's because, it might not sound very fancy, but having something, a better product, something, vehicles that are more reliable, more available, or more affordable, basically eventually gets you the market share.
Is that the case? I wonder, because isn't it by now micromobility becoming a bit of a commodity? I went to Paris, and then basically it's annoying when, especially with more than one person, you want to have two scooters and you can't get them, so you basically have to have all the apps and you go around. And so how does that work? Is it not just availability of scooters? How do you become number one?
I think I think you have to talk to the users, right? I think obviously if you come to Paris and you're just a first-time user, obviously you don't make a difference between the different service providers. But I think when you start to use this service and again, and then there's one player where I'm just made it up, one time out of three, basically the vehicle is not available because it's out of battery, or there's a problem with the brake, or it's not where you need it. And then you have another operator where it always works. It's always like it's always
So
charged.
it's your domestic market.
Works.
It's not the tourist. It's really the domestic
we are really
market.
focused on the local market. Yeah. For the tourists, it's quite different. I think it's quite hard actually to differentiate yourself because they just see vehicles on the street. How can they know basically which one is better? But if you choose
the domestic market, you have a far more reliable kind of demographic conversation. Like, where are they? What are the patterns? All
exactly,
this. And you can repeat the business.
So that's what we are interested in, right? First, like if you want to change the way people move in cities, you have to be focused on the local market. I mean, more from a vision or dream standpoint, right? And second, if you want to develop loyalty, retention, basically, well, it's the locals that you have to target, right? The tourists, they come in and go, basically. So tourists, I would say to some extent, we are happy to offer a service, but they are not our main focus, right?
The product itself as a differentiator, your focus on that, and then your Dott operating system. Yeah. But it's not like they're saying, oh, this is the number one we have to invest in because massive market adoption. That's not the same strategy you're playing.
Well, I think there's a third one probably, which we did not mention, but which is our ability to win city tenders. So we are a heavily regulated market. And to some extent, what we say is that we are B2G to C business because, basically we depend on cities first to operate. So getting the approvals or winning tenders, and then we can offer our service to users. And so the way our business is structured, first with all operations in-house, gives a very strong sense of reliability basically to cities, and also the fact that we are very focused on being a responsible player, so from an environmental standpoint, from a social standpoint, so offering full-time contracts, all our employees are shareholders, basically increase a lot also our chance to win these tenders compared to some other operators that have more outsourced business models.
I see. We can now go in two directions, and so one would be how you retain your culture as you're scaling, and you were mentioning your people. But I'd like to park that. I want a brief segue into that relationship with local government. That's not for all companies, but there's a whole section of companies now, obviously in micromobility, but also in the gig economy that's running into more and more problems with governments. It's, we have this discussion in the Netherlands about the dark stores, the Getir and Gorillas and others. And they're offering a business that's doing really well on one hand, but they're running into more kind of resistance at the government level. You seem to have prioritized that relationship, or at least you're investing in that relationship with government. Can you briefly explain how important that is for you and how you approach that?
So, the perfect example is Amsterdam, right? We are in Amsterdam, we are not operating in Amsterdam. Why we are not operating in Amsterdam? It's because one, we could not to date homologate our e-scooters for the Dutch market because of the national regulation on vehicles. And two, we could not, even if we would have gotten e-scooter approved, probably we would not have gotten the approval from the city of Amsterdam to operate in Amsterdam. So this is just to say that it is critical for us, basically, to get, first, the approval at national level to operate, and then to get the approval from the cities to operate, so that we have a market, right? And no approval at city level, no market for us. So this is why we invest a lot. And I was talking about three pillars in our business, which are software, hardware, and operations. But in reality, a fourth pillar in our business is public affairs in general. And so today, for instance, we have a team of about 20 people that are just focused in public affairs across Europe.
Is that unique, or have your competitors the same kind of?
It's the same for our competitors. Yeah.
Okay. Because there's a lot of talk about, especially Paris, about scooters around, and then you saw the spaces where the scooters could be parked. There's been a dialogue, right, between the suppliers and governments that seems to be working now in your favor.
Yeah, exactly. I think for the cities, generally speaking, they are in favor of micromobility, right? Everyone in Europe understands that cities have to give more rooms to micromobility, that they have to support micromobility, build cycling lanes, and basically replace cars, right, in cities. The problem is that shared micromobility on one side was great because it was basically helping people to move to micromobility, and it was super easy. You just needed a phone basically, and you could unlock a vehicle and get on a bike or on a scooter. But in the same time, it was creating a lot of negative externalities, which was, basically the scooters cluttering the streets. There was no parking solutions for them. And obviously, there were also safety issues with people not necessarily knowing how to use the e-scooters and putting themselves in dangerous situations. I think as operators, it's just normal that we have to understand these city concerns. And so what we have been doing in the past years is really work with these cities on, okay, you see some problems. One is parking, the other one is safety. Let's work together to solve them. So this is why, for instance, in your example of Paris, to solve the parking problem, we say, okay, first we need place for parking spots. If we don't have locations to put the e-scooters, we'll never be able to solve it. So we worked with the city of Paris to define, I think it was about 3,000 parking spot locations across Paris so that we could park the scooters.
You did that as industry, or did you do that as a company?
We did it as a company, as Dott first. And then we said, if you do that, we are going to build on our side the technology so that we can enforce basically parking through GPS localization.
So you took the lead. I mean,
that's what we did.
But the city provided it, or you had to rent the space?
The city provided the space.
Okay.
And we are paying actually a fee also to occupy this parking spot.
But it's a generic space. It's for all scooters.
Only shared scooters, yeah.
Yeah, but it's for all your competitors.
And then we agreed, obviously,
so they gather into one place instead of being straight up.
So, but that's interesting. I mean, so you basically you went ahead and solved a public-private problem. Which then became also a standard for all your competitors.
Now it's becoming a standard, I think like what we call a smart parking, basically.
You didn't wait, or you didn't start kind of a joint effort with your competitors in this space?
In this case, we decided to go ahead by ourselves because we had this idea and we thought it could work, but then it became, I think it's becoming an industry standard, but there are other cases where we cooperate basically with our competitors on specific problems in cities or regulations. Actually, one of the things I'm personally working on is really building this kind of industry alliance where we are agreeing on specific ways of working in cities. So
I'll take the other half of that. So culture, I've listened to some other interviews that you guys have given. There's not a lot of talk about people and talent so much on those interviews. Maybe no one's asking the questions, but you talked about the Dott OS.
Yeah.
I'm just metaphorically translating that over into how you run the company. What does that mean from a culture perspective, and what did you do to make sure it could evolve as you grew?
Yeah, we have a very strong culture at Dott, and I'm personally a big believer in setting very clear values in a company from the beginning. And actually, I always say, like, the first brainstorm we ever did at Dott when we were just 5 or 6 people was about what kind of culture we want to establish in the company so that we are happy and proud to work in this company, but also so that we make the company successful from a business standpoint. And so during this first brainstorm, we established basically what would be the values of our business. And so, the values of our business, I don't know if you're interested in or not, but basically they are, we protect our planet. That's number one. Number two, we are transparent. Number three, we care for each other. Number four, we work smart. And the number five, which is very startup, is we keep pushing. And so this reflects a little bit the kind of responsible company we want to be from a social standpoint, from an environmental standpoint, but also the fact that obviously we want to be a business that is successful and therefore working smart and getting stuff done and so on. Yeah.
But you grow to many different markets. Maybe one step back. You're in Amsterdam. You're not your staff is not even using the product. So I mean, I can imagine that
your
every
Amsterdam
time,
staff.
Yeah, Amsterdam staff. Yeah, and that's a big source of inspiration. Basically, you using your own products, you seeing what's working, what's not. So you're running that company. You're trying to retain your culture. Have different kinds of feedback in different places. You're going to new countries. How do you ensure that culture? It's also one of the questions actually we came from our audience. How do you ensure that culture remains strong, and how do you evolve with that culture? Because the feedback is coming from markets outside of your own.
Yeah. So the first thing is obviously you need to incorporate the values and the culture match in the recruitment process. So basically you need to evaluate candidates also in relation to the culture of your company. Two is you need to make sure that you tell everyone about these values, the kind of culture you want to build, the vision of the company. And so, for instance, with Henry, who is my co-founder, every time that we have newcomers, we have, now, we are in COVID time, but basically we have a call with them where we tell them about the story of the company and put a specific focus on the values, what's the rationale, what they mean, and basically do a Q&A around it. So it's very important for us that the newcomers, the first interaction they have with us is basically about the culture of the company. And three, I think, is you need to make sure you keep communicating about these values. We have also awards. Our yearly awards are around these values. And it's not like these awards tend to be team awards because we want to promote also collaboration. But the awards that we have is not, just some money that people get or whatever. It's basically they get some money, but that they are going to donate basically to an organization of their choice, which also I think reflects the kind of company we want, and I think is much more meaningful.
So they get a budget for donation.
For instance, they get, I don't know. Yeah.
What's been your major challenge in retaining culture? You've designed all these kind of features and the awards and others, but what's been your challenge you feel when you went to other cities?
Honestly, for us, it was not a challenge. I think we have been very disciplined at communicating it, recruiting accordingly, and basically engaging with everyone around these values. And what we see is that actually, like, these values are almost more lived abroad than I would say at our headquarters itself, right? We see amazing things I think, our first value is we protect our planet. The engagement of people for that is crazy. For instance, our team in Poland, our initial scooter, which was launched now 3.5 years ago, and is still basically being operated, which is, for our industry at least, pretty exceptional. The guys, it's almost their challenge. They're all the time thinking, okay, how can we maintain? How can we make sure it lasts as long as possible? Our team in Lyon, in France, they basically worked on a process with the first generation of scooters. They said, okay, how can we keep these e-scooters going on? They converted these e-scooters to be used by disabled people on wheelchairs. And so that will give basically a second life to these e-scooters.
Like a motor or something.
It's not exactly. So people on wheelchairs can basically go on these e-scooters. What they did is that they brought the handlebar down, basically lower, and now they can use it. And these are not projects that were top-down managed, right? It's people that really, truly believe or embrace basically these kind of values and decided by themselves to lead these projects. Yeah.
As we've gone through this conversation so far, and we've covered the different topics that we do with everyone, you've had a lot of great answers, very clear, but it almost would sound like Dott is this wonderful story and it never had any giant problems or issues or any breakdowns or anything like that. You mentioned once you almost killed the company because of having to... Give us something here that says, hey, look, there were some really hard times and there was some tough shit and difficult situations. I'd love to hear one or two things that really kind of kicked you guys in the head.
Yeah, so the first one I mentioned, right, was,
all
huge,
the hardware.
Hardware is hard, I like to say. No, I think the second thing for us, as probably other entrepreneurs, was COVID, right? So obviously we did not plan for COVID. And suddenly, like, people during the lockdowns were not moving anymore. And if people are not moving, well, nobody is using our service. And so we had this very hard time where we saw our revenues going down by 80-90%. And at that time, we had to take some, very tough decisions. So among them was, okay, do we keep offering our service or not? We said yes in a reduced way because we believe we have a public service and can help people basically move safely, right? The second was, okay, should we reduce the size of the team? Should we fire people, basically? So a number of companies decided to do it. We decided not to do it, leveraging basically a lot of the mechanisms that were used in many countries to reduce basically the cost of labor during these times. And thankfully, basically, we managed to survive. And then once the COVID was, or at least the lockdowns ended, the good thing is obviously we had retained our workforce, and then we could really use the jump in demand basically to our full advantage, and that's what
you
happened.
had people waiting to get things done.
Exactly, we were getting ready basically for the.
But you were less leveraged as well than some of your competitors, I assume, or you had a more healthy financial.
Because of our discipline and being much more conservative, it's true that we were much more lean already than a lot of our competitors, which enabled us also to better sustain the time of the lockdowns.
I think we have a new feature on the podcast, which is questions that have been brought up from the audience. We asked the audience on LinkedIn,
Cool.
hey, what a question. You already brought one in, but maybe you want to...
Do you think that micromobility companies could at some point seamlessly integrate with public transport to improve capillarity? Mm-hmm. Somehow similarly to how it works in logistics with last mile delivery services?
Yeah, so definitely yes. Actually, we are already working a lot with public transportation companies and are working on integration projects. We see ourselves really as a complement to public transport. So we see public transport as being very suited for longer distance trips within cities. And we are basically, I would say to some extent, the new public transportation service for short distance trips. And so there's, I think, a big interest from us, so as shared micromobility operators, but also from public transportation companies to integrate so that we can offer a seamless service to people.
That interest exists. I mean, is it also on the software side, on the availability, the timing, and
that's the thing is, I think on our side we are almost ready to do it. Technologically, it's not super difficult for us to make it happen. But obviously, the public transportation companies, a lot of them are, a little bit less quick when it comes to technological developments, and so we are patient. We are there. The door is
always
open,
want to share that data either,
with them. Yeah. There are integrations already happening. It's just that the initial integrations we are working are often not very deep. So basically, maybe we start just showing our vehicles on the public transportation app, for instance, but then the users cannot yet directly basically use their subscription to use our service. But I think progressively, the integrations will get deeper, and I think also it will standardize. So today there is no real standard on how to integrate. So every integration is a bit ad hoc. I think in the future what we see is that there will be standard formats, basically, in terms of APIs and so on, that will emerge and will make it easier.
Can't you go, in a sense, couldn't you go around that with the map companies? Like, like
Google Maps?
Yeah, Google, I guess the map company, but there's a few others. But you think, well, if I'm going to go book a trip and I can see the train and I can reserve and I can put the whole trip together from the get-go and boom, it's all connected, assuming I arrive on time or the reservation. Like, I assume that's already going on, but I don't see it necessarily.
Yeah.
It's always like you have to piece it together.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's happening directionally, I would say, and for us, our goal is, we have a fleet of vehicles. Our goal is to maximize the usage to some extent. We don't really care so far; it's profitable, basically, where the users come from. But it's happening. I mean, we are integrated, for instance, with Google Maps. We're integrated with City Mapper. So it's not only public transportation companies, but there are also all these, navigation apps or mass, basically, apps that are willing to do it. We just don't know who is going to win that battle. We are very open. So far, it basically directs traffic to us. We're happy. Yeah.
So now we're going to do a series of quick answer questions.
Yeah.
We just throw you the questions, quick answer, no long discussions on these, just quick. So first one is, if you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would you do that with?
With any historical figure? I think, actually, I forgot his name, but I would love to talk to the person, and I know this person is still in Amsterdam, I believe, who launched the first shared bike scheme in Amsterdam, and I believe it was with these white bikes.
Yeah.
I never met that person, but I would love actually to.
Okay, if
to
you're
talk
listening,
to that person.
if you're listening,
we should be able to make
Maxim would like to talk to you.
Yeah.
What's one?
You know who the second shared bicycle plan was in Amsterdam?
I do not.
Basically, you go to the police, say my bike is stolen, and the police tells you steal your own.
That's what I was taught. I was told the original bike sharing was you go to the train station, and then if it's not locked,
that was the second plan. No, the first white bike plan failed because the white bikes actually only had a plant in Amsterdam, and then they were taken somewhere else and painted black, and they were not.
One lesson has your job taught you that you think everyone should have to learn at some point?
I think I think it's really for me the importance of culture. So building, a clear framework in terms of vision, in terms of the values you have in the company from the beginning, from day one, and not wait. And I think that helps a lot to ensure like great level of consistency in the company, and making sure that people can make the right decision in a great level of autonomy. And I say that because I hope we got it almost right with Dott, but in my previous company, my previous startup, basically we did not do this job, and at some point, basically, like people were moving in all sorts of directions. Yeah.
Do you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
I consider myself as an introvert, but who is forced by what he's doing to act as an extrovert.
A work-trovert.
Exactly.
Someone made you
But it's true that I'm someone who likes a lot also from time to time to be alone, actually. Yeah.
If you're going to write a book tomorrow, what would you write it about?
So first, I've been already writing a book, which is a fiction, which is based in my city. But I think one book I would love to write otherwise is about the OFO story. Yeah. So the Chinese bike sharing company. I think it's such an amazing story. I think which was at the origins of the free-floating shared micromobility movement, but also a great story probably of what not to do also, I think, as a company. So, yeah.
The story of what not to do. Any productivity hacks for entrepreneurs? Any particular tools that you use that make your life a lot easier?
Good question. I would love to.
You're like, I'm open to suggestions on that particular one.
Exactly.
If you could start another business tomorrow, what would that business be?
It would be about basically small nuclear reactors.
Micro-nuclear reactors?
Micro-nuclear reactors, yeah. Actually, I co-founded a non-profit association which promotes knowledge and investment in new forms of nuclear reactors, so particularly the ones that are called molten salt reactors. And I cannot, unfortunately, now, but I've been offered multiple times, actually, to launch a startup in this field. Yeah.
Fusion as well?
No, that's fission.
Just fission.
The good thing with fission is that we know it works. The question is more how to make it safe.
You're in Amsterdam. You're seeing a bit what's happening in the Dutch, tech scene. Any observations you want to share, towards the founders? Suggestions there. What are your observations basically?
I think the first observation, which was a bit surprising to me, was that I see in the Netherlands that not that many startup companies or scale-up companies make their employees shareholders, basically, of the company. Mm-hmm. And it's surprising to me because I think it's an amazing way to motivate people, to recruit people also, and also to make them feel ownership in the company and act accordingly. And what I've seen is that it's not that often, actually, at least in the initial stage, that the startups or the scale-up make all their employees shareholders. So I think it seems to me like a number of Dutch founders are missing on this opportunity. I think it's partially explained also by the fiscal or the tax system in place in the Netherlands, which doesn't make it really favorable for employees to get this up, basically. That's my first observation. The second one, I think the Dutch entrepreneurs, I find them extremely social. Much more open, I would say, to the international environment, at least from my experience, than many entrepreneurs I've seen, for instance, in France, which tend to be much more French, I would say. I think it's I think it's due to the fact that I think Dutch in general as a society, and I think it links to its history also, has been much more naturally open, basically to for trade reasons also to other countries. Obviously, Dutch master English, and so I think it. Even if not all Dutch startups go right away international, I think they have some ease at doing it due to the culture. And three, I think the level, I think it's improving, but so far I would say like the Dutch investors in general are probably a bit more conservative in terms of how they invest compared to American investors, or even I would say British, or even I would say French investors in general. So I think it's a little bit harder for Dutch entrepreneurs to scale fast, because I think they have a little bit less access to money compared to other countries.
We sort of get into the wrap-up phase, and I think you have an audience here who are listening. They're entrepreneurs, maybe soon-to-be entrepreneurs, who knows? Hopefully they're focused on scaling if they're listening to us. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to share with that audience? The microphone's yours.
Yeah, I think what I would say is that I think I hear a lot of entrepreneurs, or at least part of the entrepreneurs, that are mostly interested in, I would say, in monetary success. So basically, like, okay, how do I become successful? Building basically a massive company. I think I would recommend entrepreneurs. I think. Or at least these entrepreneurs maybe to be probably much more focused on, okay, like what kind of impact can I have or positive impact on the people that are going to join my company? How can I make sure that they learn, that they benefit from the company? And how can I make sure also that I have a positive impact on the environment, on the cities, on the society, or the environment where basically I am operating. I think retrospectively, I think, and I hope also for myself, I think if you are able to tell yourself, like, I had a positive impact on the people that joined my company, they learned something, they got something really positive out of it, or the people that use my service were, incredibly happy about it, then I think personally, then you can be proud of what you did as an entrepreneur.
Thanks a lot. It's been a real pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Maxim. It was really, really great. And I hope we'll see you scale even further. And we're really, really proud to have you on our program. Of course, very proud to have you here in the Netherlands with us and showing us how you scale a very decent, well-built company.
Thank you for having me and correcting my French accent.
Don't thank us.
Thank you for listening to The Scale Lab, a podcast brought to you by TechLeap. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please share it on your network via social media and give us your feedback. See you on the next episode.